The top 20 tracks from our favorite and most dreadful Metroid-Vania games. Metroid games, Castlevania, your Hollow Knights, and some other surprises. This is the opening track to Metroid, a track daring you to play. Beautiful. But our first track, officially chosen by the mighty fine people in our chat and our Discord, is from Castlevania. This is Abandoned Castle, Curse of Darkness. Going. If you want to check out more of that track, it is Abandoned Castle from the 3D Castlevania game, Curse of Darkness. Really nice track. I liked what they did in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where they had this cool hybrid of classical and rock, and it made for very epic and sort of elegant arrangements, and usually pretty fun stuff. Rockin', but always with like an ear towards being dancey, and I think this one carries on that tradition. I don't know if they're the same composers, but it works really well. Definitely has that kind of galloping with a nice kind of dancey hi-hat. Because those first Castlevania games on the NES were still pretty dancey and rockin'. They pounded, so it was cool to see what they would sound like once you had access to CD audio. Similar to Falcom, Castlevania has a sound team made for the series. So much good music from these sound teams, which probably is a good way to go, because you can, if somebody, I don't know what that means. Does that mean just one person works on it? It seems like when you join a sound team, you're going to be doing some work that might not get fully credited, or you might not be recognized, but maybe that means they can switch people off. Like if this person's not feeling this track, or you have more minds to draw from. It's a pretty big thing composing a game. Sometimes soundtracks to games have like 4 discs worth of music, right? 80, hundreds. Don't just stop at 80. Could be hundreds of different sound cues that you need. Especially in a big-ass JRPG. And they have a huge reputation to live up to, as the music for Castlevania really set the tone for what a lot of video game music was going to be for decades to come. An excellent track. Alright, looks like this is obviously from the Spanish version of the wonderful Disney hybrid where they took two movies, Mulan and Moana, put them together, and it created this ancient samurai mummy warrior. This is a track from that game called Moonlight Dance. Yeah, really interesting track. Very sort of... I'm hearing... I don't know if this was made in the same era as the Sega Genesis, but some of the bass synthy sounds and the other piano sounds, and just the composition of it. I hear bits of Sonic the Hedgehog. I hear Streets of Rage with those Dancce pianos. It's got kind of... There's like a menace there, but even the way that goes... It's sort of like a cutesy way of doing the rhythm, where it's kind of dancey, but it stops you all the time. And I think it works really well. If this is an older game, that is... The original version was released in 2005. Wow. And a remake in 2011. Where a mummy warrior takes on the grimy underbelly of 80s Detroit. It was originally a Doujin game made to look like an MSX game. Oh, I see. Doujin, I'm guessing, is... I was going to say a shooter game, but I think you actually explained it. It's a Metroid-Vania that focuses more on puzzles. It's very hard. Gotcha. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed 2005, but 2005, they were sort of ahead of their time going, doing the throwbacks. I mean, when was the, like, Xbox Live Arcade and all that stuff? That was a little bit later on when indie games started really getting into at least the console world. I guess the PC world was ahead of the time, but sounds like they were figuring out that you can operate in the niches and the nostalgia. Huh, what an interesting little corner of the video game industry and history. And a fun little track. Thanks. A doujin is a Japanese word for fan-made games. Generally released independently in like a comic market. Okay. So you buy this out of the back of some guy's truck. Cool. Hey! You like some doujin? Next up, another track I don't recognize. This is from the game Dust, an Elysian Tale. The track is called The Cirelian Trials. Whatever the hell all that means. Yeah, it's a cute little number. It's very delicately done. Maybe that's the way the samples that they chose. But I mean, like, yeah, you can hear the harp clearly coming through. All the strings are done in kind of a soft way. It's almost got like a kind of a magical sort of like Disney fantastical orchestra behind it. And then for some reason you get this electric guitar. He's sitting in the back of the orchestra.
Ah, you like guitar? You play violin, I play the guitar.
And that really hard snare drum too. Yeah, very industrial, as Chris is saying. Yeah, it's an interesting track. But they go together nicely. It's because they don't have the guitar too obnoxious. It's not too high in the mix. It's very thin and it's this crispy little layer. It's sort of like deep frying something. No, not even deep frying something. It's just like putting something in the oven to crisp the top. They microwaved these cheaper samples, so it's ready to go. It's a orchestra and a microwave. And then a little crispy guitar to give it a bit of crunch. Well, of course, it's Alexander Brandon. We all know him. Thank you, Chris. Our first track submission from Big Boss Steve. Welcome, Big Boss Steve, to the top 20 family. Now let's harshly critique his pick. Metroid-Vania is the theme. He chose Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Pretty good choice. A game that lives completely on the nostalgia for Castlevania. So, we're off to a good start. But will the song be good? It's luxurious Overture. Start the judging now. Man, what a great track, Steve. Beautiful. Sometimes tracks that are classical and sort of royal and elegant can be really sort of cold and stilted. But this has that Castlevania beat to it, that sort of galloping but dancey rock drum beat. And then the melody is just wondrous, exploratory. It's just letting you see this whole game. Here's a big castle. You're gonna be there. And a lot of the melody, the strongest parts of it, or at least the opening parts where it's sort of setting the tone, really sounds like something you could hear Nobuo Uematsu make in an older Final Fantasy game. Oh, so nice. And it's almost funny, the places that it goes. It's so cheeky. What if I went to this chord here and maybe danced a little bit over here? Beautiful. Bravo, Steve. First pitch knocks it out of the park. Next up, a pick from Claudio. This is from the game Blasphemous. It is Entregaras tu rostro a la Senora. You will give your face to the mistress. Wow, I could listen to that all day. What I love about it is it's so delicate and pretty, but every time it does a chord change, it's a very dramatic shift or drops a note down. So it feels like wherever you are has been taken away from you. And then with all these, like so much reverb and the choir voices, drowning is a good way for it. Heavenly, but uncertain. So if you were with a mistress, and you were cheating on somebody, how it could feel so sweet, but there's that underlying sense of evil at the act you're doing. Entregaras tu rostro a la Senora. It is time for a Prince pick. Where will he take us? This game is called Wuppo. The track is Radio Dekster. Blijpolair, I think, but it looks like it's spelt in Dutchanese. It's an interesting track. I don't know if that's how it was originally designed to sound, or if it's because of the way it was compressed or put on the internet, but it sounds like they've chopped off a lot of the highest and lowest frequencies, and they've kind of squished it in, almost like you're listening to it on a radio or something. And it's very mono. So there's no space to it. It sounds like you're listening to it. I mean, it is Radio Dekster's in the track, so I don't know if this is something you hear in the environment on the radio passing by. Maybe that's the feel they're going for. This isn't a proper level area track. Yeah, it sounds like something you might hear in a menu or like an overworld or something. It's really hard to categorize because, I mean, this part here could sound huge because you've got this everything in this track sounds like it could be a massive sort of festival piece. Festival isn't a dancing festival and pumping, but it's condensed into this radio sound. It's pretty weird. So you only hear this when you have the radio item equipped in Popo City. I'd be really interested to hear this in its entirety. The entirety of its audio spectrum. I'm pretentious. Another Claudio pick at the bottom of the list as we snake back. This is from Shantae, The Pirate Curse. Rave in the grave, Grandma. Yeah, I think Chris said it best. It does sound like a parody of Castlevania, a really cutesy version of Castlevania. It uses some of the same rhythms and the sounds and scales, but it's done in a cutesy, more kid-friendly way. Less self-important, but still really intricate. I always see this game, and I hear that it's good, and I hear people like it. This franchise. I think when I see the character, it makes me think it's going to be a bad quality licensed game. Like maybe this was some kind of a animated show kids like. And I don't think it is that. I think it just has always been its own thing. And then it's just the way... I don't know. And then maybe the animation you see is not like as good as you think it could be. So there's just something about it has always... maybe not want to try it, but I probably should give it a try. It looks similar to Shovel Knight. Great music. Nice track. Second track from new contributor, Big Boss Steve. Get your pencils out. This is Cave Story. Mimiga Town. Very interesting tempo to this track. It's not in a rush to get anywhere, but it has this kind of heavy rock beat behind it. It's just trucking along. It's just a few beats per minute slower than you would normally expect. So it gives it a, which is better for games that need to, be calm and if you're going to be spending a lot of time exploring, backtracking. That higher pitched sound, the lead instrument right now, really sounds like something you'd hear on a Game Boy. All of it actually sounds like a Game Boy track. Yeah, pretty classic melodies and writing to that time. A good one. But there's something about the slightly casual feel to it. Is what makes it interesting. Next up, one of the newest contenders for the top crown of Metroid-Vania, a roguelike. This is from Dead Cells, Temple. There's so much going on in this track. Really, really dense with layers. A lot of different instruments all fighting for space. The drums and the rhythm definitely feel like... make it sound like it's in space. And then you've got this very traditional, exotic-sounding stringed instrument, which gives it that sort of exotic Middle Eastern temple sound. Maybe Indian? But there's so much going on around it. Feels like they add so many different instruments as the track goes on. Pretty epic sounding. This to me would sound like something you'd have in a menu. It would be very intense to be playing in a level for this. And it's very sort of like compressed, you know? The composer for the Shadowrun rebooted games, John Everest, he uses a lot of that kind of guitar, that almost like where you're playing with a what do they call them? It's kind of like a vibrator. This laser pointer, an ebow. That's right. It vibrates the string. That's why girls like guitars. Well, this was originally going to be a Metroid episode or a Castlevania episode, and we expanded it to allow for all the other games that have been released in that genre. But we've got a lot of Castlevania picks from Sifflon, or Sifflon. Sifflan. This is Castle Corridor from Castlevania, Aria of Sorrow. Sounds out of tune. Yeah, some weird tuning issues in this Game Boy Advance track. This would happen on the Super Nintendo sometimes. Really noticeable on the Super Nintendo Street Fighter track. There's a few ones there. I can't remember which ones, maybe Guile or Ryu or Ken. One of the standout tracks has some terrible tuning in it. And a lot of compression. But it was a limited platform at the time. But beyond the sound quality of it, it's an interesting Castlevania track. It's got kind of like a relentless push forward, and it just sounds like a Castlevania track, you know? Lots and lots of key changes, just to kind of keep it interesting. Okay, let's check out the higher quality version of it. Guitars. with it. Guitars and strings. I like the classical stuff in there. Cool. Next up, this is from Cave Story. The Cave Story remastered soundtrack. This is the main theme of that. Got sort of a spooky sound to it, the melodies that they choose. But again, it's done, it's like trying to play spooky, kind of creepy music, but then using really happy, bright sounding instruments, and also really happy, bouncy rhythm, and then this happy modulation in key. Which would make sense. I mean, look, just looking at the background of this, it's at night, there's a moon. A blood moon, maybe. Dark, spooky clouds, but done in this very cute kind of pixel art way. Around 2 minutes has different sounds? Well, let's get to it. Oh yeah, this goes quite proggy. Originally reminded me of Mystic Cave from Sonic 2. Nice. Is this next game a Metroid-Vania? You be the judge. It's from the Remedy game Control. The track is called Furnace. That was Furnace from Control. The feeling you're experiencing right now is how I felt playing this game. Metroid-Vania games are, in general, something that gives the player access to a lot of areas, and then through unlocking different powers and abilities, now you have access to those areas. So they're gated off because you don't have the ability to fly or double jump. So Control does technically hit that. But I would say that, like a lot of games now, the genres are getting blurred so much. I mean, it used to be, back in the late 80s and 90s, RPGs had progression mechanics where your character increased their stats, and action games didn't. And action games didn't even really have a story. And now your typical big budget game is going to have everything. It's going to have action. It's going to have a cinematic story. It's going to have progression systems. It'll have Metroid-Vania elements. So, I think this definitely fits in something that would make you feel like you're in a claustrophobic area of a Metroid-Vania. So I'll give it that. How about we brighten things up? This next track is from Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Heart of Fire. Nice track. Yeah, I think the GBA Game Boy Advance sound chip does a lot more justice to this track than we heard in the last one. This sounds a lot better. It's more suitable to it. Well, that guy's got those kind of timpani sounds on the background. Boom, 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 boom. Very orchestrical. Very rocktastic. Ooh. Pedal that organ. Oh, this is a fan remaster? Okay. That's why it sounds a lot better than the Game Boy Advance. Nobody was listening to Game Boy Advance music. They were just playing. They probably weren't. It was like people weren't as likely, I think, back then to be carrying around headphones. They weren't demanding as good of sound. What was that? It's like switches to an Asian scale all of a sudden. There's so many of these Castlevania tracks we've heard today are such deep cuts to me. Look whose face it is. This is from Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Pitch Black Intrusion, the sequel to Aria of Sorrow, this time on the DS. See all that sword. Yeah, I think you guys said it best. It was interesting to hear the Game Boy Advance sound and compare it directly to what it evolved to on the DS. Nintendo's never been one to push technology, other than maybe on the NES. But even then, when they were sort of leading with, like, say, Super Mario Bros. 3 near the end of the NES, there are more powerful consoles out there. The TurboGrafx 16, known as the PC Engine in Japan, the Sega Mega Drive, the Master System. But the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy, although never way ahead of the other portable consoles, always had the games, and they never overstepped their bounds in terms of battery power. They knew that parents didn't want to be putting in 6 AA batteries, or AAA batteries, or whatever, right? Yeah, the GBA was a portable SNES with worse audio and no Super FX chip. That's why if you want to find the best way to play Final Fantasy IV, known as Final Fantasy II in North America, on the Super Nintendo, most people would say play the Game Boy Advance version, but patch in Super Nintendo music. Because then you get all the content with the actual, and probably, I think, a better translation, and then, but the better music. You gotta have the Super Nintendo music. This is a really fun one. Actually, in terms of actual composition-wise, it is so nice to hear the DS just expand so much beyond what the Game Boy Advance was doing. But this is it's a very catchy song. Dancey, a galloping rock beat again. Just very kind of icy sound, as somebody said earlier on. Super catchy. This track kicks ass! Now for something probably beautiful. I don't recognize the name of the track, Windtorn Ruins, but I recognize the game, and I'm excited to hear it. Wow. Well, like Chris says, it does instantly transport you to the world of Ori. The flutes give it that foresty feel. There's a lot of gentle reverb and synths. I like the way that they sort of fade in, fade out, almost like the forest is breathing. And there's a very heavenly female voice. Everything is very lyrical in it, whether it's whatever that instrument is, some kind of wind instrument, like an oboe or something. Everything sounds like fairy voices singing. And like, those almost sound like wind chimes. They're probably some kind of like wooden mallet instrument, or it actually might be a hung. You know those metal instruments? They look like a wok that's upside down, and people bang on the pads. That's actually probably what it is. Oh, and these strings come in with that modulation. It's just like so heavy, so emotional. Beautiful. This is from the sequel. I love the Ori games. And I love this track. Thanks, Chris. You probably are not legally allowed to do a top 20 about Metroid-Vanias without the track Bloody Tears. Featured in many Castlevania games. This one is from Castlevania Judgement. I'll get you to look at the title screen here. Interesting font. Very extreme, very like late 90s. Let's see how it sounds. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's my favorite version of the song, but I can see why people really like it. That like this sort of J-rock style guitar. It's pretty saturated. It's very grandiose. It definitely sounds like they are trying to give it as much as they can. Yeah, I find when you add a lot of orchestral bits to a hard-hitting rock song, you can lose a lot of the punch. Let's check out some of the older versions. This is from Simon's Quest. So much punch in the bass and the drums. I like those, the way they use those NES chords that kind of go in. Yeah. All right, from Castlevania 4. So that big bass. Oh man, that's so epic. In a tiny compressed way. All right, that was from the Super Nintendo. Let's see what the Genesis could do in Bloodlines. Sounds pretty good in the Genesis. I think they could have pumped out a bit more bass on it. This is from the PlayStation version, Symphony of the Night. This is pretty similar to the first one we heard. I don't like that. Apparently there's a second version in Symphony of the Night. Oh, gross. Okay, let's go back to the very beginning. Simon's Quest. Give me, baby. One more time. It's the danciest rock beat. It's the same beat you'd have for Faith by George Michael, American Girl by Tom Petty, Last Night by The Strokes, Valerie by Amy Winehouse. The classic. Another Castlevania track. This is the Order of Ecclesia. Clashing of Waves. Dancce. Man, that's really, really nice. Probably the most, out of the Castlevania tracks, the most groovy. Not as hard hitting and straight ahead as the other rock beats. This one's got a very like snake-like sandworm on ecstasy and a bit of ketamine feel. Killer bass. Definitely sounds like something that was started off as a really good bass and drum groove, and then they just added the rest on top of it. Really nice. Great melody. Not quite a Castlevania game, but a Castlevania game. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. This is Moonlight Temptation. Sounds like a lovely dessert. What a strong track. Great sounds, great composition. It definitely feels like, because these games are Kickstarters, these Bloodstained ones, and they took a long time to come out, and they are banking on fans of Castlevania, especially Iga's version of Castlevania games, that they went very traditional with the music. All of these tracks from Bloodstained really feel like they could fit right in with the 16-bit and 8-bit Castlevania games, which Iga didn't work on. I believe he was the Symphony of the Night guy and did a bunch of the Game Boy Advance ones and DS ones, right? But people tend to credit him with the entirety of Castlevania. I could be wrong about that. And if I am, don't give a fuck. So is the thing that Castlevania switched to more of a Metroid-Vania in Symphony of the Night? I don't understand why the Vania gets put on there. Right, so he did start with Symphony of the Night. Okay. Like, Metroid had the Metroid-Vania format when it was just Metroid in the late 80s. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, Vania gets tossed into there. I guess when you call it Metroid-Vania, it sounds more like, oh, it's this larger pool we're all drawing from. What if you just say, oh, it's a Metroid? Then people get confused because then they think it has to be a space game. But they're all ripping off Metroid. Alright, I like Sifflin's point I've added that the Vania part that Iga added in Symphony of the Night was the RPG elements. Leveling up your stats, dialogue, different kinds of power-ups. Okay. I learned a lot today. Impressively made by but one man, Axiom Verge. Quite a homage to Metroid. This track is called Cellular Skies. There's some elements to the melody that could feel like they could be in an older Metroid game, but it definitely jumps out in a way from the Metroid format of doing music, which is usually way more ambient, alien sounds, not necessarily something cohesive you can grab onto. This is just a very dancey, more simplistic, straight ahead, but very active and catchy video game track. Very original. Not at all what I was expecting. And I like it. 2 tracks left in our top 20. Another track from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. An Empty Tome. It's pretty dancey in this empty zone. I was almost going to come in talking about 30 seconds ago because it had sounded like it was repeating. It kind of did like an A section, a different A section, and then a B section where it really goes crazy. It's really nice. Yet another one of the Castlevania galloping type rock beats. Really dancey, strong, catchy melody, elegant, fun, kind of spooky. Really nice track, baby. Adds to the overall just fun atmosphere of exploring these castles. And kind of, because as you play through these games and you're backtracking, you become very powerful, right? Because you're getting more and more abilities. You're backtracking to other places, smacking down bitches. So it pays to... These games don't need like a sad, depressing atmosphere. Right? They want to motivate you to go on, jump on that thing, smack these guys down, smack those bitches. Our last track in the top 20 is from a Mega Man game. Apparently, it's a Metroid-Vania Mega Man game. Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection. Mega Man ZX Advent. Here is the track. Rush Trash Squash.